Random House Audiobooks presents Transistor Radio by Chris Bohjalian. Read for you by Judith Ivey.
Transistor Radio. National Public Radio transcript, Monday, September 24th, All Things Considered. Linda Wertheimer. Periodically this year, we have explored what we've called the nature of love, those strange and wondrous ways we find our souls sparked by somebody else. This afternoon, we continue that series with the first in a 5-part story that begins with gender dysphoria, the clinical term for individuals who believe their sex at birth is in error, and ends with Noah Adams. Well, we won't tell you that, at least not today. You'll have to wait until Friday. Linda Wertheimer. Carly Banks is 19, 3 weeks now into her sophomore year at Bennington College in Vermont. Her father, we will tell you, is the manager of one of our affiliate public radio stations, Noah Adams. But this is her mother's story as well as her father's, though her mother and father have been divorced for 11 years now. This week you will meet Will and Allison Banks, Carly's parents, as well as the fellow Allison met who she was sure at first would be the man of her dreams. Linda Wertheimer. This part of the series was written by Carly, with the guidance of NPR's own Nicole Wells, while Carly was with us this summer in Washington. Carly. I was 8 when my parents separated and 9 when they actually divorced. That means that for a little more than a decade I've watched my mom get ready for dates. Sometimes, until I started 9th grade, I'd even keep her company on Saturday afternoons while she'd take these long, luxurious bubble baths. I'd put the lid down on the toilet and sit there, and we'd talk. I stopped joining her in the bathroom in 9th grade because it had started to seem a little weird to be hanging out with her when I was 14 and she was naked. But she has always been pretty cool about bodies and sex, and for all I know, she wouldn't mind my joining her in the bathroom even now when I'm home from college. For better or worse, and usually for better, my mom has always been very comfortable with subjects that give most parents the shivers. A couple of days before my 15th birthday, she took me to the gynecologist to get me fitted for a diaphragm. I hadn't had sex yet, and my mom made it clear that she didn't want me to in the foreseeable future, but she had a pretty good memory of the hormonal chaos that hits a person in high school. When I think back on it, my parents' divorce was very civilized. The way my mom tells it, they realized they just didn't love each other any more the way they had when they were first married. They'd worked together at the radio station then, and they shared everything. My mom insists they both came to the realization at about the same time that they should separate. My mom was 32 and my dad was 33, and they figured they were still young enough to hook up with someone who, in the long years ahead, could keep their motors humming the way they were meant to. Sometimes my dad hints that it wasn't quite so mutual. Most of the time he toes their party line, but every so often I'll get the impression that when he moved out, he was figuring they'd both change their minds and reconcile in a couple of weeks. I think he might have thought he was just being cool. Once when he was visiting my mom, I overheard him telling her that he knew her heart had never been into the counseling they went through when I was 8. Still, he was the one who got remarried. If I were to count, I'd guess my mom probably had 5 serious boyfriends in the decade between my parents' divorce and the day she met Dana. Dana had been in pre-surgical therapy for 2 years by then and had probably endured close to 50 hours of electrolysis. He'd been on hormone therapy for a good 4 or 5 months. Unlike a lot of pre-op M2Fs, he wasn't trying to pass as a woman yet. He hadn't begun his transition. Of course, he didn't tell my mom any of this. Not that he should have. When they met, he was simply the professor for a film course at the university that she was taking that summer as a lark, and she was one of his students. What was he supposed to do? Say to the class, "Hi, I'm Dana, and I've spent a good part of the last year with my upper lip deadened by Novocaine"? Or, "Good evening, I'm your professor. I'm about to start developing breasts"? Or if he wanted, for some reason, to be completely candid, "You folks ever met a lesbian with a penis? Have now." He had no idea he was going to fall in love with my mom, even when they started to date, and she had no idea she was going to fall in love with him. It just happened. My mom's a sixth-grade teacher at the elementary school 2.5 blocks from our home. When she went back to work after I was born, she decided she didn't want to be in broadcast anymore, and she sure as heck didn't want to be commuting 30 miles, one way, to Colchester or Burlington every day. And so she decided to see if she was meant to teach, and clearly she was. She's excellent, truly gifted in front of a blackboard, and her kids always adore her. There are some parents who think she's too lenient, and every year there will be one or two who will complain about something in the class play she organizes each spring. The girls' costumes are too revealing, the boys' dancing is too provocative, the subject matter in one of the skits is inappropriate. Nevertheless, despite my mom's popularity with her students and her reputation as a teacher, before I turned 11, I was still scared to death that I'd wind up in her class. Bartlett's a pretty small town, and each grade in the elementary school has only 2 classes. I didn't understand then that there was no way the school would allow that to happen. Still, my mom and dad hadn't been divorced all that long, and I was afraid that voicing my desire to be in Mrs. Chappell's class instead of hers would feel to my mom like rejection, desertion. Even though my parents still seemed to be friends, I didn't want her to get the idea that her daughter was taking sides, since that wasn't the case at all. Not long after the divorce was final, when it was clear they weren't going to get back together, my dad bought a house on the other side of the village. His place was about a 10-minute walk from Mom's. The custody arrangement was pretty loose. I was supposed to spend weeknights with Mom and weekends with Dad, but it never really worked out that way. I was as likely to be with Mom on a weekend as I was with Dad on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. Occasionally, I'd spend a night at Dad's simply because I could tell that Mom wanted to bring her current squeeze home for the night. No one ever moved in with us until Dana, but she certainly got serious often enough that some men would sleep over. Likewise, until Dad married Patricia, there were those Saturdays when I figured he needed a quiet evening with a prospective girlfriend, and so I'd hang with Mom. But the fact is, my main home base has always been my mom's house. For virtually my entire life, my dad worked for Vermont Public Radio. Most of the time, he was the president and general manager, which must be among the most thankless jobs in the world. It seems like you spend your life raising money and trying to explain to a lot of elderly blue hairs why VPR has so much news and commentary, and then to a lot of political junkies why the station has so much classical music. And then there are the fund drives 3 times a year. Those weeks you just don't sleep. Sometimes, if the light is right, my dad looks a little bit like Dana did 2 years ago. Same straw-colored hair, same grayish-blue eyes, same build. Of course, they look nothing alike now. After all, you can still see my dad's Adam's apple. I probably know as well as anyone what it's like to have a crush on a professor. Unlike my mom, of course, I've never acted on one. But I know what it's like to sit in a classroom and just sort of gaze at the guy at the front of the room. And Dana was a very handsome man. I wouldn't be surprised if my mom saw in him some of the same things that first attracted her to my dad. But Dana was more delicate-looking and smaller-boned. The first time I met him, when he came to a party my mom gave at our house, I wouldn't have described him as effeminate, but I might have said he had fine, perhaps even beautiful, features. And when a guy has no hair or stubble on his face, you're bound to notice a pair of really nice cheekbones, or a chin that's shaped a bit like the smaller half of a pear, and just as smooth. I'm sure some people picked up on the fact that he had begun judiciously plucking his eyebrows, but I didn't. I just thought they were shaped like the most remarkable sickle moons. He wore his hair back in a ponytail then, and he was dressed pretty much like generic professor. Jeans, a summer-weight navy blazer, and a work shirt made of softened blue denim. Loafers. He was tall and thin like my dad.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?